So as you guys are starting to finish up your Camera Obscura projects, what I want to demonstrate really quick is just an easy way to make a slideshow and voiceovers using iMovie. So if you're not familiar with the Apple operating system, I'm just going to point out a couple of things as we start to go through there so that you start to be able to put those presentations together so that we can share them on Friday. So the first thing we need to do is, if iMovie is not already down in your dock, then the best thing to do would be just go ahead and go into Launchpad and look for that application. Mine's already open and down in the dock, but if not, you can drag it down there or launch it from the Launchpad. And once we get into iMovie, we're just going to be creating a new movie. So I'm just going to hit this plus sign here, and I'm going to choose to create a movie, not a trailer. So we'll click on the button that says make a movie. So now that my movie is open, I'm just going to go ahead and grab the files that I want to work with. So I've created a folder here on the desktop. And so that folder says creating a voiceover movie. So I'm just going to double click there. That'll open up the files. And then to select all of them, I'm going to click on the first one. And then on the keyboard, I'm going to do Command A. That will select all. And I'm going to take those files and I'm going to go ahead and just drag them straight into here where it says drag and drop video clips or photos. So I'll just grab those and drag them in place. When I do that, iMovie is going to do a couple of things by default. So it places them all in a sequence based on the order that they were in my folder. And it's going to create a certain amount of time for each of those files. So once we go in here, I can just double click on one of these files. And when I do that, it gives me some information up here. So a couple of things that we may want to do. So in mine, when I drag them in, it automatically fit to the frame. By default, actually, the first time that you go to use iMovie, it's going to do this thing called Ken Burns. So what Ken Burns effect is going to do is it's going to zoom in and zoom out on your photos. So it gives some motion and things to your images. If you don't want that, then you'll need to go in there and turn them off. If you know ahead of time that you're not going to be using the Ken Burns effect, then what I would do is go up here into iMovie and then into Preferences and turn that part off to start with. So when I told mine, I told it when I place photos to fit so that it doesn't automatically zoom in and zoom out. I did that because at the end of the year we'll do a music video, and if it zooms in and out, it gets really chaotic because we'll be having lots of images. So this way they'll just be kind of stagnant. Now, two of these images, I'm not going to actually want these in here, so I'm just going to click on it one time and on the keyboard just hit delete. Now, I still have my original file on the computer. It just is getting rid of the reference to the file here inside of iMovie. So again, I'm just going to go ahead and delete, and that will kind of clean things up. If I want to change the order of any of these, I can just simply click and drag, and that will change the location and the sequence of these. And I haven't looked at them in any sort of order. So right now it's just however they came in based on the way that they were in the folder. So at this point, my movie is 15 seconds long. So if I was to play it, these files are going to go relatively quickly. So I may want to make some changes to that so I've got a little bit more time. I can either do it individually. So again, if I click on that file and give it a double click, up here at the top there is one of the options is clip information. So if I click on that, it has this area that says duration. So my duration currently is set to 0.5 of a second or a half of a second. So if I know I've got, let's say I took 20 images of us building the camera, and I was going to use those images, and I wanted about 2 minutes or say, something like that to go ahead and do my presentation, then I could just kind of do the math and figure out, oh, well, maybe I need, 15 seconds for each of those photos so that it stretches out. That might be a little too long. So I'm just going to go ahead and change this duration. I'm going to make it, 5 seconds or something like that, and then just hit return. And so now nothing really happened down here because I have my navigational setting so that it's only showing 1 frame per image, not like 1 frame for every 2 seconds or something like that. So when I play the video now, it will be a little bit slower. It's going for 5 seconds on each of those as it goes oh, sorry, I have the first one selected, so you can see now it's moving across there relatively quickly. So if I did want to do that, instead of having to click on each one individually, I could, again, just like we selected all of them earlier, Command A, and then go into this duration. Notice it lines out, meaning like it can't display because there's 2 different times or multiple times. So with that selected, I could now just go 5 seconds and hit return. And now all of them would be 5 seconds. So when I go from this file to the next, it will be a little bit slower, so I've got some more time to discuss it. Okay. So that'll at least kind of get me around inside of placing the photos. If I need to do any other options, I've got up here, I've got titles, so I might want to put in a initial title that identifies who is working on this project, so I might want to grab one of those. And again, if we're dragging, it might be easier to go ahead and grab your pen, so you're a little more precise about where you're placing things, but I'm just going to click and drag here, and I can either put it above one of these files, which would then superimpose it, or I can put it in front of or in between. So I'm going to go ahead and place it at the front, and then that way I can go in here and adjust the text. So here I could start to type in, group camera obscura and the 3 people in my group or whatever it is, just to kind of identify it before the slideshow starts. So those could also be placed in between, or if you wanted to highlight certain of the events or the big steps, you could write those into there as well if you wanted that as part of your presentation. The other things up here at the top in our bar is transitions. So with transitions, that's going to allow me to move in between the files. So right now you'll notice, like when I'm on this file here, and if we watch this top box up here, when it finishes, it just jumps right to the next photo, right? So if instead I could just do something simple like a dissolve, right? So if I wanted the dissolve, I would just, again, simply click and drag that item in between the 2 files. So if I place that there, and then now when I go to hit play, it's going to go ahead and it will then slowly, over 1 second, dissolve or transition from one file to the next, right? I could also do something a little more tricky. I could do something like a swap or something like that. So again, as I go in here, it will then swap out that photo for the next photo. And right now it's building it as it goes, but when we're in the actual file, it'll and it exports, it'll be a little smoother. So I could add any of those that I want. You don't necessarily have to use those, but just know that that's where they are. And then the big thing that you're going to need to do is to do the audio recording. So along the top up here, we've got an option for audio. And this would be like if I wanted to go in there and put like background music, right? So I could add files from my iTunes. I could go in here and do sound effects. I could use stuff from GarageBand if I wanted to record. And then there's also an option down here at the bottom, which is going to be to voice record. So before I hit voice record, I want to place that playhead, so this part here that indicates where it is within our movie. I'm going to go ahead and click that up here at the top, or move this back so that it's at the beginning of my movie when I go to do the voice recording, right? So once I click on voice recording, it indicates here that it's picking up the volume, and then it's got a record button here. So I'm going to go ahead and say start recording. It's going to give me a countdown. And then at this point, I can start talking about what's happening in my movie. So this is my one of our chickens, Nanucci. This is Kana. She lays these really crazy eggs. This next photo is from our trip to Utah, and so on, right? So whatever I have to say about my presentation, I can go ahead and do that part, and it's going to record. If I make a mistake, I can always just stop the recording. Now, this is a audio file, so if I didn't like where I started it, I could always move it, right? So I could say, oh, well, I want to, move this up just a little bit, or I started too slow. I can change its location. If I decide I don't like the recording, I can always hit delete and re-record. If I like the first part but not the second part, I could also trim it. So again, if I place the playhead here, And then up here at the top, we're going to click on modify and we're going to hit split clip. Notice there is a keyboard shortcut here, so if there was something I was going to do a lot of that, I could do the command key and B. That would split the clip as well. So I'll go ahead and clip there, and that then split it into 2 parts. So if I like the first part but not the second part, I could then go ahead and delete that part of the file. If I needed to re-screen record and add the next part, then again, wherever my playhead is where it's going to start recording, and I could go ahead and hit record. Let's make the count in. And this was from our trip to Utah at the Red Rocks. This image is a piece of seaweed that we found at Walhalla. This is another seaweed that was in Northern California, and so on, right? Once I'm done, again, I'm going to go ahead and stop recording. So that's how you're going to do the voice recording part. You can get it the way that you like it. It might be a good idea to go ahead and use the headphones. The microphone will be a little bit closer and be a little bit better at picking up that audio. Once you've got everything the way that you want it and you've got in all of your titles and voiceovers, then the next thing will just really be to export the video. So as we get out of here, the best way to go ahead and kind of share that file is if we go over here, we go up to File, there's an option for Share, and the best option for us will probably be either to just do it directly to YouTube, because then we can then embed it into our website. So that's probably the best option, or to go ahead and do it as a file. Once we do that, if we're doing it as a file, it wants to know where is it going to go, what size and resolution, and then go ahead and hit next and tell it where to save that file on the computer. Are we saving it to the desktop, or are we saving it to movies? Then once we have that file, you could either put it in Google Drive, or you could upload it to YouTube that way, unless you want to, unless you do the direct route directly to YouTube. So that should at least give you some basic ideas of what we need to do in order to create that slideshow. If you have video files too, you can insert those instead of just doing stills. So you've got a lot of options inside of there. Hopefully that helps, and good luck with your project.